Hey guys, how's it going? I'm back here with another video, and today I decided to bring this video where I'm going to be teaching you guys how to build some sort of authentication system using Firebase 9 and above in React. So Firebase updated to its new version, and I realized there aren't a lot of videos using this new version, and since Firebase is a very commonly used technology, I decided to make this video. And what I'm going to teach you guys how to do is basically a very simple web page like this. The reason is that I want to focus purely on functionality and how to make it work. But basically, as you can see, I can come over here, create a user, put like an email, like user@gmail.com, then put a password, like password, click create user. Initially, it will automatically log in. As you can see, it says user@gmail.com is logged in, and now you can click on the sign up button if you want. So I'll click on it, and you can see it's not logged in anymore. If I try to log in with the same account, like user@gmail.com, you should see that it will log in. And we'll see this again. And this is persistent, meaning that if I come over here, copy this link, open a new tab, close this, and go again, the user@gmail.com will still be logged in until we just sign out. So it's a very simple authentication system, which I will show you guys how to make. So before we get into the video, if you guys could leave a like and subscribe, I would massively appreciate it because it will help push my videos to more people, and it would just help the channel grow, which I'm really happy with the growth rate. But if you guys could help me out, I would really appreciate it. So with that in mind, let's get into the tutorial. And I basically didn't change anything. All I did was I created a React app. Then I came over here instead of my app.js. I added like the basic HTML structure of this, which is very simple. So I didn't see the point of just showing it. All I did is I just put a bunch of H3 tags, a bunch of inputs, one for the email, one for the password. This is for the register user part of the website. Then a button that says create user. And then another div with the login header, two inputs for the login, the button, and then we have this another header over here, which is just going to show the email of the person who is logged in. And finally, I added a button, which is going to be the sign out button. So, by the way, the code for all of this will be in the description. So even if you are having some trouble just setting up this initial state, don't worry, you can just copy and paste the code from the description, which will be working perfectly. So what do we need to do now? Well, with every Firebase project, we need to start by installing the Firebase library. So we're going to open this up over here. We're going to open up like a terminal, as you can see. And inside of this terminal, I'm going to install by using yarn add and then the library, which is Firebase. If you're using npm, just write npm install Firebase, and we'll press enter. This will start installing all the packages, and we can already start by creating over here inside of our source folder a file called the Firebase Config. This is how I like to call it. But basically it's just a JavaScript file which will contain all of the configuration information for Firebase. This is necessary for every Firebase project, and if you're interested in if it's your first time using Firebase, I would recommend actually watching a video I posted last week where I teach the basics of Firebase. But you won't need that because I'll also explain what the Firebase config file does. So now that we've created this and the Firebase library has been installed, we'll just close this terminal over here by just pressing this. What we need to do now is we need to fill up this Firebase config file. And the way we do this is we need to actually go to firebase.com. So go to firebase.google.com. I'll go to console, and if you don't have a Firebase account, you can just create one. Then I'll come over here to this, and we'll say your Firebase project. If it is your first Firebase project, this will probably be empty. But since it isn't mine, I'll just click over here to add project, which you guys should do as well. Then we need to put a project name. I'll call this authentication tutorial, something like that. But you can put whatever you want. Let's go to continue. Then it will ask a bunch of stuff. I'll just ignore this and click continue again. Then it will ask for an account. I'll just select the default account for Firebase, then click on create project. and it will start creating our Firebase project. This doesn't take long at all, but when it finishes creating, I'll be back in a second. As you can see, it says your new project is ready. So I'll click on continue, and it will generate this page over here. So since we're focusing primarily on authentication, I will only work with the authentication part of the Firebase system. And again, if you want to learn about Firestore, I have a video explaining that. How to like add stuff to the database and stuff. So if you're interested in that, you can just watch that video. So what we need to do first is we need to set up a connection between our React app with our Firebase application. So come over here to this button, then go to project settings, and I'll scroll down over here, and you should see that it says that there's no apps in your project, so we need to generate an app. So I'll click on this over here, which basically means web, because we're making a website. And I'll give a nickname to this web app, which let's call it, again, tutorial Firebase, I don't know, whatever I want. And I'll click over here, and I'll click on register app. Then when this app is registered, it will generate, as you can see, a bunch of code that we should put inside of our React app. More specifically, what we need is we need this import statement over here called initialize app. So we'll just come to this Firebase config file, and we'll just put the initialize app at the top. And then we need to copy this whole Firebase config thing over here, and just come over here and paste it directly. I do recommend, if you're interested in publishing this app, to use environment variables for this over here. I won't be using because I'll delete this project right after I make this video. But this information over here is very crucial. It's very important that you keep it a secret. So using environment variables and not publishing this to GitHub is necessary. So I wouldn't publish this to GitHub. I'll just keep it like this. And yeah, that's basically it. This is the information we're going to use to connect to our Firebase app. So now all we do is we just create a variable called app, and we set it equal to initialize app, and we pass the Firebase config. And this will initialize the connection between Firebase and our project. And this app variable over here is extremely important because with that, we're able to add to our project all the different things that Firebase provides. For example, since we want to add authentication, I'll come over here, and you'll see all this page over here. But what we want to click is we want to click on Get Started. And it will open up the authentication kind of console, and it will ask a bunch of stuff. Most importantly, you can authenticate with Firebase with all of these different things over here, which is amazing. It's one of the best ways, in my opinion, to authenticate because it is secure and it's really easy. So you can authenticate with Google, Facebook, even Game Center. I don't even know who uses that. But even with a phone, like phone verification and email and password, which is the one we're going to be using. Most websites use this over here, so that's what I will be using. I'll click on email and password, and you can see that if we click on this over here, it should enable this authentication type for our project. Now, it also allows you to authenticate without a password by emailing you a link, and I can make a video on that if you guys want, but we won't be using that, but it's really cool that you're able to do that as well. So now that we enabled email and password authentication, I'll click save, and you can see that it says it's enabled. But most importantly, we can click on users over here, and you should see that it has a little management place over here so that we can add users for our project. So instead of creating a database on Firestore separately and storing user like authentication information there, the authentication part of Firebase already handles this. So no matter which sign-in method you create, if a user signs in and creates an account or registers to your project, their information will be held over here. So with that in mind, let's start by implementing the authentication stuff directly into our project, since we just set it up so that it's enabled. So what we do to start adding authentication into our project is we need to come over here and we need to import a thing from the authentication library inside of Firebase. So to access that, we just need to say Firebase/auth, and everything related to authentication will be in the /auth path in the Firebase library. So the first thing we need is the get auth function, which is similar to the initialize app. It basically says that your app will be using authentication. So we'll come down here at the bottom and we'll create a variable called auth and set it equal to get auth and pass the app to this so that we say that this app will have authentication. But one thing we need to realize is that we also want to access this auth variable in many different files in our project. So I'll just write export so that if we want to use this, we can just import it in different files. And now that we set this up, this is basically done. We don't need to do anything else here. So I'll close this Firebase config.js and I'll open up our app.js, which already has a bunch of stuff. But as I mentioned before, all of this is very simple. They're just HTML stuff included into our project. What really happens here and what really needs to be done in order to make authentication actually work is, first of all, we need to create a few different functions that are going to be used in our project. The first one will be the register function, which will be used to register a user. Then we're going to have a login function, which will be used to log in if you already have an account. And finally, we're going to have the logout function, which, as by the name, you should imagine it will contain the logout functionality. So what I want to do is, with Firebase, most of the functions will return a promise, which means that there's two different ways for you to handle them. Either you use the promise, like the .then and .catch like syntax, or you make you use the async await syntax. If you're confused about both of them, I do have a video which I'm gonna link into a card up here, which I explain both of the approaches. But both of them work, and you should see examples using either way. So it doesn't really matter. I'll be using async await since it is the most modern way to handle this. So just to keep that in mind, I'll be using async await. So because of that, I need to make all of these functions async, because inside of them we'll be dealing with Firebase stuff. And I'll just save this for now. This will probably give us an error because we're not doing anything inside of the functions. But what we need to do is, but now that we have the functions done, we need to do something which is crucial for this project, which is we need to get the data or whatever the user is writing inside of these inputs. So we have two inputs over here, which are the email and password for registering, and we have the input for email and password for login. So how do we get whatever is written on each of them so that the user, or when we sign in or when we call these functions over here, we know what data the user or which email and password the user is trying to use to sign in? Well, to do that, it's pretty easy. All we have to do is take use of the useState hook in React. So I'll create 4 states. So the first one will be used, all of them will be a string. And the first one will be the register email, which will be the email used to register a new account. And it will contain a function called set register email, like this. And we'll do the same thing for the password. So register password and set register password over here. And then finally, we'll do the exact same thing for both the email and the password of the login, but we'll call it login email and login password. So I'll just copy this, paste it over here, and then I'll copy this and paste it over here as well, but change this to a capital L and do the same thing with the password. And those states will hold in whatever info we have or whatever value our inputs currently have, which is exactly what we need. So in order to say that I want to change the value of the register email state, for example, whenever someone changes the whatever is written inside of the email input, we just have to give it an onChange over here, an onChange property that will automatically change every time there's a change inside of the input. So I'll just say set register email equal to event.target.value. If you're not familiar with the syntax, this is really basic in React, and I would definitely recommend learning this before trying to deal with authentication, because it will get pretty confusing. But basically, we're just setting the input or the state value to whatever is written inside of the input. So I'll just copy and paste the onChange into the other input for the password, but change this to set register password instead of set register email. And I'll do the exact same thing with the login, but it won't be login. It will be, it won't be register. It will be login. And for the password, the same thing, but it won't be email and register. It will be login and password, like this. So now we're keeping track of all of the values inside of the inputs, which means that we can actually start implementing the Firebase authentication stuff inside of these functions. And as per usual, we're going to start with the register so that we can actually create users into our account. So the way we do this is there's a function inside of the Firebase library, which is the create user with email and password. It is pretty self-explanatory by the name, and almost all of the functions in Firebase are very, like, the names are really good, which I really like. So what we're going to do is we need to import that, and we'll import that from the Firebase library inside of the auth directory. And we'll just say create user with email and password. And inside of this register over here, we'll write await create user with email and password. Why do we say await? Is because, as I mentioned, this will return a promise. So if we want to get the promise, we'll just say const user equal to this. And this function over here, create user with email and password, it will automatically generate a new user and add it into our users thing over here. But at the same time, it will also log you in. So if you create a user, an account, you don't need to log in. You create an account and log in automatically. And the user information will be stored inside of this user variable over here. Now, if we want to deal with like errors, since we're not using the .then and .catch approach, we need to actually put this inside of a try catch and handle the errors in the catch case. So we'll say catch error, and we'll just, for now, console log any errors that occurs. We can actually grab the message. For example, if there's any error inside of this, we can grab the error message and just console log that. Now, what are possible errors that can occur here? Well, a user can try to log in with or try to create an account with information that is false, like an email that doesn't, like an email that isn't an email, or some stuff like that. But these errors will most likely occur more in the login, since people can try to log in with accounts that don't exist. So this is how we would handle that cases. One important thing to understand is that when we grab this user over here, we can try and console log it like this, console log user, and this user variable over here will contain all of the user information we need, like if we want to access information about the user. So for now, just console log it over here. Now, one thing to keep in mind is we're not actually filling anything inside of this create user with email and password. We actually need to pass two things over here in order for it to work. The first thing we need to pass is our auth variable. And the reason for that is because we want to say that we want to like reference to which app we're talking about, which Firebase app we're talking about. So that's why we created this auth variable and we exported it. So we need to get it up here at the top. So I'll just say import from the ./Firebase config file, and I'll import the auth variable, and I'll first pass it over here. I'll pass auth, and then we just need to pass the email and password being used to create a new account, which in our case is the register email, like this, register email, and the register password, like this. So I'll save this, and you'll see over here we have register email and register password. And now, if we try this out, which I'll do right now, I'll come over here. And now all we have to do to make this work is we need to copy this register function name over here and paste it as the on click for the create user button. So I'll just pass this over here. And when we click on the button, it should indeed create a new user inside of our Firebase thing over here. So let's try that out. Let's come over here. Let's write a new email. I'll write a fake email like PedroTech@gmail.com. Let's write a password. Let's write password 123. When I click create user, it shouldn't break anything, which seems like the case. And if I click on my console, you see that we're console logging something called user credentials, because we told our code to console log the user after it creates. And indeed, it created a correct user. Like you can see, we have an access token, we have our email, we have a bunch of information, which we can all access anytime we want, because this means that the user logged in. And if you really want to test to see if it's working, we can come to the authentication tutorial part over here, which is the authentication page. And if we refresh this, we can see we now have a new user. We can see how they logged in. We can see their email. We can see when they were created and when they last signed in, because we automatically signed in when we created our account. Now you might be wondering, well, but what about this over here? It's not showing the name of the user who signed in. Yeah, obviously it's not showing because we didn't set it up to show. What we need to do in order to make this part over here show like the email of the user who is logged in is we need to access the auth variable that we just got from our app, and we can say dot current user, and this should represent the user that logged in. And if we say something like dot email, it should show the information about the user, so the email about the user who is logged in. And auth, remember, is just a variable that we got from the Firebase config. That variable contains the information about who is currently logged in. And you can see that it works for us. It shows that PedroTech@gmail.com is logged in, which is perfect. But there's a caveat. If I refresh my page, it will give us an error. And the reason for that is because it's not actually like, how can I say this? It's not actually like, when you refresh your page, this auth variable doesn't contain a current user, because it needs to wait a bit for it to populate information and validate the user who is currently authenticated. So the way we handle this is I'm going to create a state called user over here. So I'll say const user. So this will just represent the user who is currently logged in. And it will be equal to an object. So I'll say useState, and it will be an object. And what we want is we want to grab something from this Firebase auth library called onAuthStateChanged. And this is actually a function that can be used to that will be fired or triggered every time there's a change in the auth state. So what I mean by that is if I refresh my page and Firebase recognizes that, or if I just go into this website for the first time and Firebase recognizes that I was logged in, it will automatically change the value of this auth variable over here to contain the user who is logged in. So over here at the top, what I'll do is I'll call this onAuthStateChanged. I'll pass the auth variable, and we can actually grab the current user directly from here, like this. It's almost like it's like the use effect, which is a hook in React. It's very similar to that. It's just a hook that you pass the auth, and you have a callback function over here. It is very simple to use. All you have to do is you just have to pass the auth. Then you make a callback function which tells us what to do when the user changed their login. So if they log in into another account or if they sign out. So what we want to do is we just want to set user to be equal to the current user that is logged in, which is the thing we got from here. So now instead of saying that we want to grab the current email from the auth, we just say that we want to grab the current email from the user state, which will work perfectly because user is being populated only when the auth variable actually changes. So when we refresh the page, you should see that it says PedroTech@gmail.com because we are logged in and it's not giving us any errors. So this is perfectly done, and it's really nice. One thing I want to show you is how can we actually sign out. So in order to sign out, we'll just come over here and I'll come to this logout button over here. And it's pretty simple actually. All we do is we just call a function called sign out. And I'll just put this over here and we just pass the auth variable as the argument to this function. Now we need to import sign out from the Firebase auth library. So I'll just put it over here. And this actually should work perfectly. So I'll copy this logout and put it as the onClick for the sign out button over here. I'll say onClick and I'll put logout. And you can see that if I click on the logout button, we should sign out. Now it's given us an error again because it says that we cannot read email from user, which is the object. And the reason for that is because when we log out, this user object over here, or this user state, becomes empty again because it means that our auth state changed. So the current user is now an empty object because we logged out, right? So now we're trying to access email from a user object which doesn't have the email property. So all we have to do to fix this is very simple. We just put a question mark over here, which means that if user has an email property, then show that information. If not, just chill, don't do anything. So I'll save this and you should see that it works. It works perfectly.
So now that we have this kind of done, we have the register part and the logout part kind of done. What we need to do is do our login functionality. So what if the user already has an account and they want to log into their existing account? Well, it's very similar to the create user, and for that reason I'll just copy all this information and paste it inside of the login. But the tiny caveat and difference between both of them is that we don't want to create with like a user with email and password. We want to sign in with email and password. Those are two different functions, and to get this function, we'll import it inside of this over here. I'll just put this over here, and I'll put a comma over here. And it is so similar to the create create user with email and password that this will remain the same. The only thing we'll change is we're trying to sign in with the login email state instead of the register email, and also the login password state instead of the register password. We can also keep console logging the user who's logged in, and we can also console log if there's any errors while logging in. So we'll just copy this information and we'll paste it inside of our login button on click over here, and that means that it should be working. So let's test it out. Let's come over here. We should see that we only have one user, right? We only have the PedroTech @gmail user inside of our account. So let me try register or logging in with them. I'll write PedroTech @gmail.com, and I'll put the password, which was password123. When I click login, you should see that we're now logged in. If I keep refreshing, it will work perfectly. It will always recognize that PedroTech is logged in. If I try logging in with another user, like, I don't know, a user that doesn't even exist, let's see what happens. It should console log a message inside of our console with the error message. So let's see what appears. I click login. It says there's an error, and the error is that auth has an invalid email. So you can see we can do some error handling based on this error variable over here that we get on the try catch. So if you're interested in handling that, you can play around with it and you can do a lot of stuff with it. So now that we're logged in, let's just log out, because there's a final thing that I want to show you guys. There's a problem. If I create a new account, for example, I don't know, pedro@gmail.com. It's different from PedroTech. The password is 12345, and I click create user. You see that I should be logged in. Did I actually log in? Oh, your password needs to be 6 characters. Oh yeah, this is a thing I want to tell you guys. You can edit this kind of validation inside of Firebase if you want to. Right now it's set to the default one, which is, for example, this has to be an email format, and this has to be at least 6 characters. So if I put my password to be 1234567, it is at least 6 characters. So when I click create user, I get logged in, as you can see. You can change that to like match whatever you want for your website. And with that in mind, this is the end of the video. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like down below and comment what you want to see next. Subscribe, because I'm posting 2 times a week, actually, because these past weeks were pretty hard because of midterms. I'm still at university, so I'm trying to make as many videos as I can, but sometimes it can be a bit hard. However, I'm still here pumping content for you guys, so if you enjoyed it, please leave a like down below, and yeah, it will help support the channel. So if you're interested in the code, it will be in the description. If you have any doubts, just ask me on the comments. I'll help everyone that I can. And yeah, that's basically it. Really hope you guys enjoyed it, and I see you guys next time.